No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it? You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
Hey, gardeners. Hope you're all having a great week. Thank you so much for joining with me here on the show. We've got a great show ahead for you today. I'm out here just looking at all of these spring flowers that are popping up here late February. And my, oh my, how the times change. It was just a week or so ago. We were totally just inundated by a massive snowfall. And now here we are. It's spring weather, spring beautiful flowers popping up in the garden. Man, this just makes you look so forward to this upcoming growing season. All right, everybody, let's get growing. All right, everybody. It's Saturday. Welcome to the Let's Get Growing show here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today. And thank you so much again for being here with us. We've got a really great show ahead for you today. We're going to be spending our day basically over on the, for me and us in the U.S. anyways, over on the other side of the ocean. We're going to be over in the U.K. today. We're going to be talking with Charles Dowding is our featured guest today. We're going to talk no dig gardening with Charles Dowding. And we also got coming up here in just a few minutes on our Are You Following Me segment, we've got with us Eli and Kate in the garden. This is going to be really great, really excited to have these conversations today. Hope you all are too. So again, thank you all so much for being here with me today. And if you can, real quick, click the like button, of course, and hit that thumbs up. And click subscribe as well too, and the bell notification so you can be notified of all of our upcoming videos and live streams, as well as share with all of your garden friends out there and your garden groups and everything. Let them know about the Let's Get Growing show here every Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern, here on the Urban Gardener channel. And yeah, let everybody know, all those garden groups out there, all your garden clubs and all of that. Let them all know about the Let's Get Growing show and all these great, wonderful conversations we get to have here with so many amazing, awesome guests that we get. We're just so fortunate here. And yeah, so let's make sure everybody else can get in on the conversation too. And also, big, huge shout out to all of you who are watching us on the replay. Thank you so much for jumping on, later on when you got time. It's really great to be with everybody here on the live streams, but it's also really wonderful to see all of you who are watching the replay and jumping into the comments section and let me know you were here. Let me know if, you got any comments, suggestions, questions, anything like that. Love to hear about all of it, even if you just want to drop in and say hi. So definitely do that for sure. And if you are here with us live right now and you have any questions or comments at all, definitely ask them. I love to see all of your questions, and especially when we've got our guests coming up here in just a little bit too. Definitely ask your questions then too as well, and get in on the conversation. Like I say, that's the great thing about having these live shows like this, is that unlike traditional TV and you get these talk shows and all that sort of stuff, you can actually jump into the conversation here with these live shows. So definitely drop in any of your questions. Put them in big, cool, bold capital letters though too, because the conversation gets going. I already see a lot of people are already talking and going on in the chat already. So yeah, definitely put them in big, bold capital letters, and that way I can see them from the rest of the conversation. And I will try to get them in on the show again too. We got a really great show today too, so we'll try to get all questions in, or as many as we possibly can. Not all of them we possibly might not be able to get into though. So all right, everybody, excellent. It's really a great week here where I live here in Southern Oregon. I know we're all spread across the world right now, but where I live in Southern Oregon, I've had a really beautiful weather, real, as you kind of saw there at the beginning with the clip there. I mean, it looks like spring is just right, and it is. It's right around the corner. I mean, it's coming up here in just a few weeks, but this last week definitely made it feel like that for sure. And seeing some of those little spring flowers popping up around the garden and all of that, a lot of the green from a lot of the spring flowers that are yet to come are already just starting to rise up everywhere, and that just really builds the anticipation for this upcoming growing season so much. I mean, I'm really is one of those times a year where things just, of course, it is the new year. As gardeners, we're always looking forward to our new year, but it's just as we get to that build up, and this is right as that build up's hitting, and you start to see those first bits of really great spring weather that you can look forward to, and that's when things just really start to get exciting, and for me as well too. And more so again to outdoors. I mean, we've already got a lot of stuff going on. I'm looking over across the way right now at all my pepper seedlings that are coming up and growing right now. We've got other things that we're sowing out this week and getting things started for a lot of the things that are going to be going into the garden later on and all that. But yeah, just a great time of year. Really excited. Can't wait. We got a lot of things growing on. If everybody is been getting their notifications, like I said, you make sure you're pushing those notification buttons there. If you get your notifications, you saw that I put out a video, which is basically, and again too, and then that's what I talk about in the video as well too. We're going to see how this goes for sure. But I got our very first garden journal video up for the 2025 growing season, and again talking about some things. I show you some one of my favorite plants that looks like it's not really, yeah, but we talk about that. We talk about some other things that we got growing on, and kind of getting geared up and started up for this new year. And I've been talking about this for a while now on the show, is that I haven't been doing so well with the video content, so we're getting back on track. We're gonna just kind of ease into it just a little bit, but we did get started with that. So I encourage everybody to go back to our video page and check out our newest garden journal. We'll get them up and going on a regular weekly basis again too, so we can follow along with all the things that we've got growing on around here in our gardens. And again too, like I said, I'm really excited for the garden season. I think I've got a few things together now, and we should be able to hopefully build that consistency with the good garden content from our garden this year, so you guys can really follow along with all the things that we've got growing on. And again, I look forward to seeing all of you as well over there on those videos and in the comments and all of that as well too. And if you got any questions or anything you'd like to see in my garden, or any questions or any of that sort of stuff, suggestions or anything like that, definitely go get into those videos and let me know, because I want to be able to show you guys what you want to see too. You know what I mean? You guys are the ones who are watching all of this stuff, so I want to make sure that I'm making videos and things like that you guys want to see. So definitely be doing that, jumping into that comment section and let me know about all of that as well too. So again, everybody, thank you so much. There are so many people already talking and going. The comments are just already going like crazy. I'm going to try to jump in and say hi to a few people. I apologize, I'm not gonna be able to say hi to most people, but again, I really thank you all so much for coming and taking your time to be a part of our conversation here on the Let's Get Growing show this weekend. Again, like I said, we got some really great guests coming up here in just a few minutes. Did want to say real quick a big shout out to our facilitator, Jay Dixon, in the conversation from Midwestern Ontario, Canada. Thank you so much, Jay, for being here. And you got to watch out in the conversation. Jay is our facilitator. She'll help keep the conversation cruising along there, as well as dropping in any sort of pertinent links or anything like that. If we're talking about something, Jay will help help us find more information and links to things that we're talking about in the conversation. Just all sorts of wonderful stuff that Jay does there in the chat. So again, thank you so much, Jay, for being here with us today. And let's see here. And again, too, lots of people here. This is just really wonderful. Really great to see you. I see also we got Rob's Allotment Gardening. Rob, thank you for being with us here again this weekend. We're up in your neck of the woods today, so I hope you really enjoy the show. And let's see here, David Bowtie Life in the Garden. He says, I'm in the weeds and listening in. I may pop in and out of the chat. Awesome. Excellent. Big West Lawn Care. Awesome. Thanks for joining with us, Big West. Awesome to see you in the conversation. I see Rick joining us, like I like to say, from the future, nice and bright and early over there in Australia. Thank you, Jay, or Rick, for being with us here today. And yeah, excellent. And our other moderator for the show, Adam Burley, my good friend, joining us from right up the road here in Central Point, Oregon. We both live here in Southern Oregon. Good to see you. Dusty Flats, awesome. Great to see you. So good. Excellent. Aaron, let's see here. Let's flip through and find a few more here. Pilar, it's so great to have you all here. Awesome. And I know this is early on too, because like I said, this conversation's kind of already going on. I'm just kind of going back real quick here before we get moving on. We've got Bohemian Herbology Natural Solutions. Very excited for today's show. Wow, what a phenomenal guest. That's right. We have some amazing guests today. Really, like I said, really awesome of them to come and join with us here on our show. So awesome. Excellent. Good to see you, Leslie. And look who's in the chat. Our good friend, Gardner Scott. Awesome. We'll have Gardner Scott back on the show here real soon too. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Lorraine, good to see you. Jersey girl, excellent. Sam, great to see you. All right. Let's see here. English Ladies Kitchen Garden, excellent. Like I said, we got a great show today from over on that side of the pond, as they say, right? Excellent, everybody. Thank you so much again for joining with us here today. Oh, also, I see Tony from Simplify Gardening in the chat as well, too. Always good to see you, Tony. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining the conversation. Skippy also as well. Let's see here. Again, I always like to try to get as many of you in here as well, too. Let's see here. Mobius, timing is everything. Love the guests. Awesome. Excellent, Mobius. Great to see you. All right. That's good for our shout out section here. And one more. Anna, thank you so much for being here. All right, everybody, we got to get moving along today. Like I said, we do have some really amazing guests here today. So let's get moving along here. We got we'll take our real quick first break here, and then we'll be right back and get on with our Are You Following Me segment and see our first guest today.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and author, Saving the World with the Home Garden. Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
this week's trivia question is C. There are about 100 different varieties of radish, and while the most common colors are red and white, they can come in colors as exotic as blue, green, and even black. And while some radishes may take on an orange tint, there are no specific varieties known for producing orange radishes. Thanks for watching. Head over to Sarah's Seed Shop where you can find garden seeds at unbeatable prices. Enjoy the rest of the show and have a great day. Hi everyone, this is Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop here with another trivia question. Radishes come in many different colors. Which of the following is not one of them? A, black, B, blue, C, orange, or D, green? We'll be back with the answer a little later in the show.
My, oh my, oh my. Editing snafu for sure right there. Definitely. Sorry, Sarah, for Sarah's Seed Shop. It looks like we played the answer before we played all of that. And again, anyways, thank you anyways for Sarah for taking her time and putting that together for us, as she does each and every week with such a great little segment there of our Sarah's trivia. I'm sure later on for our other break, I'm sure it'll play again, but whatever. I'm sorry, everybody there. But anyways, go check out Sarah. We got a link down below in the description. Go check out some seeds that she's got there. She's got some wonderful heirloom seeds in her seed shop there. A lot of really great garden essentials. We love supporting Sarah over at Sarah's Seed Shop. So definitely go over there. And again, like I say, you won't find a better price on seeds anywhere. And for the value and the amount and all that sort of stuff that you get from her, definitely shop for some of your essential seeds with Sarah's Seed Shop there. And also too, did you guys all catch last week's show? On last week's show, we had with us our friend Mark Boucher Colbert joining with us live. I was actually supposed to go up to Seattle and join with everybody. So many great gardeners, so many awesome people. I wanted to go spend the week with and everything up there because it was for us in the States, probably one of the largest flower and garden shows in the nation up in Seattle, and definitely one of the earliest for sure, getting the season started. But last week we had Mark with us joining live from the Flower and Garden Show. He did a little segment for us and did some walking around and checking everything out, and then joined with us live on the show from the show, and then also showed us a few other things as well too. We had Wendy join with us. She actually joined us. She was just getting back home from the show, so she was back in LA, but she spent the first couple of days up in the Seattle Flower and Garden Show, and so she hung out with us last week too. We talked all about the show, talked about what she was talking about there at the show, all the different things that were going on. And again too, it's another wonderful part about this time of year is all of our spring garden festivals and shows and all that sort of stuff that we get to have and attend in our local areas and everything. Also on the Sunday edition of the show too, we had our good friend Jennifer Neubauer from Hook and Garden on the show. That was a really fun conversation. It was really great to catch up with her. Jennifer and I are good garden friends from a while back, and it was great to catch up with her and see what she has growing on this year on Hook and Garden. So hope you all go back and check out some of those shows from this last week. And all right, everybody, let's catch up with our very first guest today. It's time for Are You Following Me?
Are you following me? Are you following me, dude?
All right. We got joining with us Eli in the garden with Eli and Kate. Thank you so much for being here today. It's so awesome to have you on the show. Yeah, excellent, excellent. It's so great. I found your show or channel through our good friend Gardner Scott. He's in the chat right now
Yeah.
too. Everybody, a big shout out to Gardner Scott. But yeah. So been following along with you. I love what you guys do there on your channel, and again to the. I think the fun part. I think everything too is you bring such a bit of fun and great energy to the garden. So I love that too as well. So
It should be fun. So
that that's right. That's right. So real quick here, give you a minute here for maybe anybody else who hasn't met you or your channel and all of that too. Give us a little bit of tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel and all of that.
in 1 minute.
Oh
Okay,
well,
so
you got a couple minutes. You can
it's like the
definitely take
elevator
it.
pitch. So yeah, so
That's
Eli and Kate.
right.
So it's myself and my wife Kate, and we garden
Yes.
in an average suburban garden in the east coast of Scotland. And it's just our joy. It's our happy place. Lots of flowers and shrubs and things to make it pretty. Little bit of veg just for some fun. And it literally is just where we go to escape the world and escape our day jobs and things. I think everyone needs a garden.
Absolutely. And I'll just mention this kind of right at the top too, because kind of on that sort of sense of things too. You sent me a little bit about yourself too, and I really kind of loved the forwardness about how and what your purpose is in gardening and everything. Because for me, I'm one of those food growing, doing the small space, urban gardening, all that sort of stuff. That's kind of what we do here and all that sort of stuff. But you say, you garden more in the traditional UK sense of activity, just getting out and
Yeah,
enjoying
it's
your
a
time.
hobby. Yeah.
Yeah. Gardening for you is a hobby that is about making your home a pleasure. And even though I love growing for food, it was a big thing for me. I also love growing for my home. I love growing flowers. I love growing things kind of makes things kind of aesthetically looking nice as well too. Some
Yeah.
people don't really care for that, and that sort of stuff too. I am an all around lover of gardening when it comes down to it. And I think that what you say though too is, I think in a way too, is kind of important to say as well too. That we all can just garden
Yeah.
for fun. We all can just garden as a hobby.
Yeah. When
We
it's not
all can
fun
art.
anymore, then it becomes a job. And it's like, no.
Yeah. Well, I know. I mean, as much as I do, it could seem like a lot of people are, man, that really seems like some work, and it really is. I've got schedules, lists, journals, things, all sorts of things I'm doing. So it really can seem like a job
Yeah.
at
I mean,
some
for a
point
long
in time.
time, I
But
was the same. I took it so seriously, but I did a thing a couple of years ago where I said, right, okay, I'm going to deliberately show how
yeah,
much food you can grow from such a small space. I
yeah,
didn't change my garden, it's just the bits I had. And it
right.
really took the fun out of it for me being so structured and scheduled. And I found that I'm really not enjoying this. It's becoming a chore. So it's like, no. For me, it's got to be something that I can just rock up on a Saturday morning and just decide then and there what I'm doing, rather than spending my week at work in the office, looking out the window and seeing that one sunny day and you're stuck in the office, thinking, oh, I could be getting this out and I could be getting that done, and oh, this needs done. So
Yeah,
yeah, so it
yeah.
was a good wake up call for me that maybe this isn't for me. It's got to keep low key, fun, relaxed.
Yeah. And I'm just I for me and my personality type though is that I'm kind of one of these high energy, got to have a lot of things going on types and stuff like that. So in some ways I find that for me as the type of gardener I am, gardening is perfect for that sort of thing because of all the different activity that's involved and all the different aspects that I could just really kind of involve myself here and there and do all that sort of stuff too. So in some ways, I find that gardening in a way can do both, give me that multiple bit of activity, but at the same time, while I'm in the process of doing it, it always does that sense of kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
you can get into all of the activity and then go, oh, okay, now my mind can kind of chill out a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's that
Right?
switch off for me because I work with
Exactly.
technology. So being in the garden's a fantastic switch off away from all of that kind of stuff. And I can just be me, just in the garden, bit of music on. And it's like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. And again, too, that's it's just the surprising things that we get from gardening, and it's why there's so many of us out there that just really, have such a big passion for growing and everything that we've got to start our own YouTube channels and do all of this sort of stuff to share with everybody because that's how much we really love this stuff, and we just got to share it with the world. And again, too, I really like what you guys do. Um, Real quick though, let's dig into it's one of the things we love here on the Let's Get Growing show is talking a little bit about garden stories and all of that. I want to go back a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your garden story. How did things get started for you? I mean, for a lot of people, it's when they're young, family, that sort of things. But some of us, like myself, we get started a little bit later in our real garden passion and all that flourishes later in life. How about for you? How did your garden story get started?
This is where I have to come up with a really good origin story. It's like,
Yeah, no, you're right.
so
Exactly.
yeah, like you, I didn't get started early at all. So
Mhm.
I grew up in the tenements of Glasgow, which is basically the
Okay.
really kind of packed in what you guys might call apartments. So stacked flats, single
Yeah.
level, one on top of the other, no gardens, just wasn't a thing. Very, very working class. So, that gardening to make things pretty just was not a thing. People were too busy working. So I never grew up with a garden, didn't have parents or anyone who gardened. And it was only 13 years ago now when Kate and I moved into this house that this is my very first garden. So this was me learning completely
Yeah.
from scratch, just hitting the books, hitting the internet, making an awful lot of mistakes. But because I had never had that in my life, it was the most exciting thing. And it was just like
Yeah.
you make mistakes, you learn as you go. Sometimes it's a bit sad, but when you get those little victories, so exciting.
Mhm.
First time I had ripe tomatoes that I grew myself. So exciting! I grew this one. The first big dahlia, because dahlias are big, posh, expensive plants, and I grew my own. It's little things like that that just hook you and get you going. So yeah, it's a whole change. But that was late 30s, very very late 30s before I get into gardening. So
Yeah. Pretty much the same similar story for me. I'm used to apartment living pretty much myself. I mean, those bigger ones like you're talking about here, I guess we would call more like projects and that
yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah,
And
exactly, yeah.
I had a couple experiences younger with those sort of situations, that sort of living as well too. But I started right. I had a friend give me a little cucumber plant, and that just got me going. I had a little balcony in an apartment, and got going. But then I moved here, and then I've been here ever since. And this is really, as I've told people, I've always kind of grown the house plants. That's just kind of, I've dabbled here and there throughout my adult life, but it was later in my 30s that I got that cucumber plant,
Yeah,
started
that's
that,
it.
moved here, and then I got a little bit more, not much more space, but I got a little more space, and my mind went crazy. I was like, oh, I can grow this, I can grow that. Let's do this, let's do that, and everything. And
Yeah.
like you said, that it just like you're saying, that's how it kind of works. We get caught up in it, and then at first, like, how awesome is this? I really enjoy this, and then from there, we just go crazy. Get
I
all
was
the
just about to
seeds,
say when you said the
try to
everything,
plant all the
like
plants what you
all of the
can.
plants, far
Don't
too
know
many
anything about
plants.
spacing, right?
Yeah, I think all of us start there. But you'd be
Exactly.
amazed how many things that we will read or we'll get advised on. It's the traditional ways of doing things, and you discover actually I can do it differently. I don't have to stick to that. Those are
Yeah.
the best practice. You'll get the best results doing this. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it. And you only discover that because you're not following all these people. You're just in there getting in, getting your hands dirty and making your mistakes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's a big thing too. And I always tell people, and you know, and that's probably one of the bigger pieces of advice you get out there from a lot of gardeners when they're talking about to newer gardeners is take it easy, take it
Mhm.
slow, you know, find successes, build on those, all that sort of stuff. But I always have to tell people is that, you know what, I give this advice, but at the same
But you don't
time, I'm going to
follow it.
let you know that that is not what my journey was like. Not at all. And
It's far too easy
I
for us to
totally
give that
get,
advice.
yeah, and I totally get it if you do not listen to me at all and completely ignore what I'm advising you.
Yeah.
But that
Well, I
it is
quite
a good
often
way to
say that.
start though. It is a
Yeah.
good piece of advice when we look back at how we got started and everything too.
Yeah.
But
No, I'll quite often say to folk, don't listen to me, don't copy me. And I have a running joke on my channel about don't listen to the weirdo on the internet. And I've got a t-shirt that says I'm the weirdo on the internet.
yeah. Exactly. I'm gonna tell you what I know is best practices, but at the same time, don't really judge me by what I'm actually doing though.
Yeah,
But that's
exactly.
the fun of gardening, and that's the great thing about gardens too, is the flexibility of them to be able to garden in that such a
Yeah.
way, right?
And the thing is as well, we all have little tweaks to our garden, little microclimates, things that are happening that our gardeners will follow, will admire, but they'll be from somewhere
Yeah.
completely different from where we are, and we can't necessarily copy them. So quite often that just get out, just go and do it and learn things, make mistakes and work it out is the best way to learn sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It really it is because that I think is really the ultimate piece of advice is experience, you know, because experience gets us everywhere,
Yeah.
anywhere
Yeah.
in life, you know, that sort of thing. And it's the same and true with gardening is that ultimately jump in, start having fun. Don't take any sort of things. I mean, and another thing that you always throw in there too is I challenge you to kill as many plants as I did in learning how to garden. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. So don't let that get to you. Uh, my daughter, I've been gifting her plants and cuttings and things like that, and she's been doing really well. So they got a pretty good sun in their room and all that, right? So she's got one of these pothos, and she knows it's one of my favorite plants that I got. It's one of my oldest ones, and it just finally had one leaf that finally yellowed and came off, and she was so sad. It's
Mm.
so sad about that one leaf. And I
Well,
was
if it
like, I
makes you feel
totally
better,
get it. I know. And I remember feeling like that when I was
if it makes her
first
feel
learning.
better, I absolutely suck without plants. I just cannot keep a house plant alive. I don't know
Oh
what
no.
it is,
Yeah.
but we have a
Yeah.
pothos and but in there this morning, looked at it, it's
Yeah.
hanging, and almost all of it's gone yellow. Feels like overnight. Bright
Yeah.
yellow.
Yeah.
And I was like, the internet said it could be this or it could be that. I have no idea.
Right.
House
Exactly.
plants and me just do not get on.
Right. And here's the thing about houseplant advice, right? You could be overwatering it. You could be
Underwatering
underwatering
it.
it. You
Too much
could be
sun,
giving it too much light, not
not enough
enough
light.
light. For almost everything that goes wrong, it's just like, oh man, they get. I know they're so much fun, so much challenge. But again, too, that is again part of the fun of gardening, though. Too, is learning through those
Yeah.
challengings, gaining the experience, and all of that sort of
Yeah,
stuff
you'll
as well.
find your
Too,
way
right?
of doing things that works for you. Stick with it.
Yeah, excellent. And so let's see here. What we've kind of talked about. Now, let's see. What are some of your favorite things to grow in the garden? I know right now you're like gearing up for flowers and flower season and all that sort of stuff. But are
Mm.
what are those what really gets you going and gets you the most excited when you get started?
Yeah, so I think it's like anything else. It's cyclical. There's fashions to it. So right
Mhm.
now, I think my excitement is medallias.
Yeah,
Which when I first got into gardening, I was like, I won't grow that. It's a granny plant. It's the kind of plants everyone's granny grew. Not fashionable at all. But it's become
yeah,
really fashionable again now. It's gone round in that circle. And there are just so many absolutely stunning flowers, all different styles, all different colours. And it's just amazing. It's that every year, because where we are, we don't have horrendously cold winters compared to standards of a lot of the guys in the States. The
Right.
coldest it'll get for me, maybe -8 Celsius, but that's the coldest. Mostly it hovers around -3, -4. So it's not horrendously cold, but it's wet. It's incredibly wet. So we get about 160 days, wet, rainy days a year for us. So dahlias are tubers, which if you leave them in the ground here over winter, they get so wet they just rot. So there's this whole process of digging it up and drying it and storing it, packing it away, keeping it alive over winter, bringing it out, nurturing it to bring it back to life, and then getting huge blooms if you do it properly. Come the end of the season, it's the dig it up, pack it out, all that again. So there's something in that if you get it right, it's such a showy plant. Just huge dinner plate sized blooms. And I think it's the ultimate reward if you get things right. It's having something that's just giving you multiple flowers this size. It's it's a proper pat in the back.
Yeah, yeah. I've grown a couple of dahlias, and I just know that there's so many out there. I go to this garden show down in Southern California at the end of the season in the fall, the Heirloom Exposition, and they always have this great dahlia show there with all these.
They have the weather for it.
And the amazing amount of like varieties of different flowers and they are so beautiful, so amazing. I'd have to agree. They're probably one of my more favorite flowers. I mean, I love all sorts
I
of
think
flowers.
there's a type of dahlia for everyone. There's the nice, subtle kind of daisy-like ones, great for your pollinators, and then there's the huge, big, blousy, show-offy ones.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So yeah, I'm gonna have to. I got to look at that and in fact, maybe get some. I see that there's some at the garden center right now, a bunch of them. So I probably need to get some new ones put into my garden for sure. Right on. What's one of your least favorite things to grow? I mean, there's got to be something that just gives you a trouble all the time.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Mine.
So there's something, I love it. I love the harvesting of it and the fact that I can grow it in my garden, but it is just terrifying to grow, and it's apples.
Apples?
There is so much that can go wrong growing an apple tree, and any one little thing can ruin your harvest for a whole season. Come back around till next year. You won't know that you've got it right until the very next year again. I just find apples terrifying. It's like too easy to just ruin everything.
It really
but it's great when you do get the harvest though.
If there's really here that has the most problems, it probably is that oh no. Can you all hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Am I still here? I'm still here.
You're still here.
This darn system. I've got this little gremlin in my system right now that likes to play around and pops up just whenever. That's the problem with figuring out what it is. It just pops out whenever.
I think it might actually be me, because I've done this to Scott in his live stream as well, where I appear as a guest and he gets kicked off air. So
yeah. I had Jenna from Growfully with Jenna on several weeks back, and she doesn't do live streams or any, and this was like one of her first times doing some of this type of show, right? Oh, no. And that happened, but it kicked me off, and so she was left by herself on the show.
Having to run a live stream.
But she jumped right in like a superstar, man. She just jumped right in with the comments and started answering questions and talking with people in the comment section and everything, and just took it over. It was just wonderful.
Baptism of fire.
That's right. I was like, you did so good. I'll have to invite you to do like a guest hosting spot or something sometime.
Get you back up.
Definitely. So right on. What are some of your biggest gardening challenges there where you grow?
Mostly it's just the rain, the wet. So
pretty wet.
Everything is constantly thinking about, okay, whatever mixes you're using, whatever you're growing, you have to then think, okay, but it's going to get seriously rained on. So any containers need to be up off the ground so that they can drain. Things like tomatoes, growing the tomatoes outdoors, the rain can completely ruin the flavour on them, because it just swells them so much and makes them so watery that they really lose their flavour. So it's just
Yeah.
you have to be constantly thinking of all these kind of things. Do I need to try and cover some stuff up? Do I need to change how I'm growing it? So things like garlic, even in my raised bed, I had a year where about half of the garlic just rotted in the bed.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
was because we've got clay soil. So of course, with all that rain, there was this
Just
shelf that hadn't
puddles and
broken up, and
saturated.
it just puddled under this one bit. The garlic rotted.
Mm,
So now I grow garlic in containers because I can put lots of holes in them. So
yeah,
you've
yeah.
got to adapt. It's
You
just
do.
yeah.
That is a big thing, and especially nowadays to everything. My issue is the complete opposite of that. Here in Southern Oregon, we're dealing with drier and drier seasons. And so having to figure out, how do we, keep things from, I do a lot of container gardening, making sure things don't dry out, doing,
Yeah.
just a lot of that sort of stuff going too. So, I could use a little bit of that rain, but I'm sure you could use
If we
a
could
little bit
split
less
each other,
like
it'd
we
be
got,
great.
right? I know. Can't we find
Yeah,
some
because
happy
we don't
medium?
get the kind of hot baking summers like you guys get. So we don't have
Yeah.
problems with droughts, and we don't get hose pipe bans and that kind of thing. We get some really lovely warm sunny days in summer, but it's kind of middling for us. We don't get that baking. But I
Yeah.
don't know how I would cope if it suddenly changed. I don't know how I would learn to be on top of the watering like that. And I think I'd cheat and I'd put irrigation in.
Tony over at Simplified Gardening says, I don't get any summer.
Yeah, so Tony's weather's about the same as mine.
That's right. You poor folks there too, getting all saturated in that English rain up there in the UK, huh? Well, Scottish rain for you, right? But
Yeah, Welsh for Tony.
yeah,
See, that's the thing down in England.
but just up there,
Most of
but
England
just in
get
that
the really
area, it's
hot
just
summers. Yeah, they
yeah,
get the droughts and the hosepipe bans and things. So even between us across the UK, it's a bit of a joke where we're out with the hoses watering the nice green lawns, and the guys down south are, everything's parched and they're not allowed to run the hoses and things. And it's only a few hundred
yeah,
miles. But yeah.
right on. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Before we let you go or anything here, do you got any advice or tips or anything? I for new gardeners.
Yeah, it's not the advice people expect. But
I know we
I
kind of touched
mentioned
on this a little bit, so
I mentioned on the weirdo on the internet thing.
yeah,
I
yeah,
always give people the advice of stay away from the internet, stay away from social media. You have
yeah,
to
yeah,
learn locally first so that you can then think about what you're hearing, the advice you're getting, and apply it. Because we
yeah,
forget sometimes that the horrible algorithm means that things sometimes have to be phrased certain ways, or there's certain styles of videos that will be out there an awful lot. Doesn't mean it's necessarily the right thing for you if you're new. But if you don't
yeah,
know that, you don't know how to take that, how to apply it. So I think it's always great to say to people, start off local. If you've got local gardening groups, other gardeners around you, start there. And then jump in and go mad on YouTube and Instagram and all of that once you've got a little bit under your belt.
yeah, yeah. And it's as I say all the time though too, is that I try to give best practices and best advice I can and all of that, with the caveat that I do live where I live. So it's not going to necessarily be the
Yeah.
same for you and all of that. And I think that advice is wonderful. It's something I've been touching on a lot about in talking about community and all of that. That's where we gardeners can really truly
'Cause that's the
succeed.
thing, we just don't know people's situations, and they'll ask a question, and with all the best will in the world, we'll give them an answer that we know for us, and it might be exactly the wrong thing they need. And then, the way the internet works, we can't take the time to ask all of the questions we need to ask. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And that's again too, I don't know what you got for the equivalent up over there. Here for us in the States, we have what are university extension services, and they're basically the where you get the best gardening information. The best most up-to-date knowledge about gardening. It's where our master gardener programs are usually ran through and that sort of thing as well too. So those are always great places for anybody here in the States. But if you can find that sort of equivalent wherever you're at, whether you're
in the UK,
you know,
we've got kind of societies. So we've got the RHS, which is the sort of Royal Horticultural Society, big one for England and Wales. We have the equivalent in Scotland, the Royal Caledonian Horticultural Society, and they're the experts for your area and the ones that will run all of that training and kind of thing. So,
all right, okay, excellent. Anything else you want to let us know about anything you got coming up here on your channel? Any sort of big projects or something that you guys are looking to get done here soon?
Big thing for this year, it's an ongoing series I'm doing because for the very first time ever, I'm trying to grow for show. So it's fine. I grow heaps and heaps of spring bulbs. I love them. It makes the garden beautiful. But growing for a show is very different because I have to make that daffodil flower perfectly on a set day. And it has to be the most beautiful daffodil. Perfect petals, perfect leaves, standing straight. The face has to be a certain way on a certain date. So it's a very different challenge because you're basically having to learn to manipulate nature and speed it up or slow it down. So that's the series going on this year as I'm trying to learn to do this. And so far, everything is way far ahead and trying to bloom, and there's still 5 weeks to go. So we shall see if I manage to get a single bloom on the show bench.
Right, exactly. But you know what? Lots and lots of fun in doing that, and lots of enjoyment in the garden. And again, like I said, I just really love your enthusiasm and the joy you bring to what you do in your content. It just makes it so fun to follow along. And for all of you out there who haven't had a chance to go check out Eli and Kate in the garden, we've got links right down below in the description for you there. I'm sure Jay's dropped some and drop that into the chat for everybody here who's live as well too. But thank you so much for spending your time with us here and hanging out with us and talking about what you got going on. Absolutely. We'll have to have you back on again soon, and I definitely look forward to that.
Happy, and I shall see you again soon then. See ya.
Bye. All right. I'm going to save you all. I thought about it there, but I'm going to save you all the second break of the show. I don't know what happened with my editing and what I did there again. Sorry to Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop there. I bungled up your trivia this week, but we'll get that back on track. We always enjoy Sarah's trivia. Again, check out Sarah's Seed Shop at sarahseedshop.com. I got a link down below to her seed shop there. And again, thank you to Eli for joining with us today to talk all about what they got growing on there at their channel and everything too. It's always great to be following all of these amazing guests that we get to follow each and every week here on the Let's Get Growing show. So definitely get down below in that description or follow the link Jay's probably put there in the chat, and go and check out one of their more recent videos there and leave a comment and let them know that you saw them right here on the Let's Get Growing show. Thanks for doing all of that too. I really appreciate all of you who take the time to do that too, because it really is kind of important to support those who are taking their time to be on the show with us here each and every week. And speaking of that, we have an amazing featured guest, and I know everybody here in the chat has been waiting because we've got just a wonderful featured guest this week. I've been excited myself, just really excited since getting this gentleman booked onto the show to get him on here and have a great fun conversation about no-dig gardening. We're going to jump right into it today. It's time for our featured guest.
You never know when you might learn something, and that's what this is about for me. These are people that I admire. Please welcome my next guest.
So, all right, all right, all right. Joining us here on the Let's Get Growing show, we have with us Mr. Charles Dowding. How are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking your time to be with us here on the Let's Get Growing show.
Hi, Enoch. Pleasure to be here. All good, thanks.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, like I said, I've been really looking forward to this conversation with you. I know everybody who's tuning in today, all of our guests have been looking forward to it as well. And again, thank you for being here. Let's jump right into it. First of all, again, one of the things here on the Let's Get Growing show, just like I was saying with Eli, or just a little bit ago, is talking about garden stories. I know you've got a nice historied garden story. I'd love to kind of dig back a little bit and hear a little bit about, how you got to, get to gardening like you're gardening today and doing what you're doing with your no dig method and all of that sort of stuff. Where does your garden story begin, Charles?
I guess with my mother actually planting trees, and
Yeah.
that was one occasion, one afternoon in a springtime. I felt really connected, and I was a student at the time. And then I got interested in nutrition. I wanted to grow healthy food, so that led me to organic. I had a friend who guided me a bit on that, and that was really helpful because if you don't know much, you don't know where to look even. And I grew up on a farm, and we were using chemical sprays, fertilizers, the whole range of everything like that. And I hadn't even thought about it. And then, I would go out with a tractor and rotivate the soil, like everyone did. And then I
Yeah.
realized a lot of weeds were growing, and I just gradually came towards doing it more naturally. And particularly weeds is what I noticed when people were cultivating soil. They just had so many weeds,
Yeah.
and I thought there's got to be a better way, and that led me to mulching. And once I started mulching, I didn't want to dig the soil anymore, and so on.
Yeah. So so this is just, along the way, just this kind of discovery, they pile it up and then you're dealing with less weeds and everything. And then
Well, someone gave me Ruth Stout's book actually. It's like
right.
No Work Gardening, and she mulches with hay. And so I tried that. Actually, in my first year, 1982, I bought a big trailer load of spoiled hay for £400. There's a lot of money in those days. My father thought I was mad, and put it on the ground because I knew that would feed the soil life. What I hadn't thought about was slugs. And the following spring, I lost so many plants. And then I realized, well, why does she recommend that? Or how does she deal with that, Ruth Stout? And it turns out she's in Connecticut and it's really dry there. No one, she just assumed that it would work anywhere, I think. I don't know quite. But it taught me the importance of, you've got to tailor your method to your own location. And so I ditched the hay. Well, I put it on the compost heap and
Yeah.
then started using compost because that doesn't give slug habitat. So things like that I've been working out as I go.
Yeah, yeah. And then again, too, kind of like what we were talking about there before, too, is that it just seems like this is kind of the, experience, just like most gardeners out there. You're just kind of getting out, you're looking into things, studying, learning just little bits about gardening, but
Yeah.
then just slowly but surely you're kind of figuring out some of these methods and what's really working and how
Yeah.
and what that connection to nature just really is, though, too, right? I mean, I suppose
Yeah, well, exactly.
that's where it kind of happens. You're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
what I need to be doing here is more what nature's actually kind of doing, and applying that to a more, I guess what you do though is a more organized market garden method, right?
Well, I was market gardening, so I needed to get it right. It was a commercial
Yeah.
thing. And I was the only no-dig market gardener that I knew of. There weren't even many of us doing organic. So that was what we concentrated on, getting that message across. And the no-dig for me was just happening. And I
Yeah.
did it without mentioning it to anybody because no one in the 80s was that interested in soil. I mean, there's some people listening who might not like that statement, but generally it wasn't the hot topic in those days that it is now. And
Yeah.
so, we just weren't discussing it really. But what led me to no dig partly was wanting not to have so much time devoted to weeding, because I just see that as lost time. So I mulched, and then, you know, once you've got your mulch in place, it makes sense to leave it there. And I, you know, I remember thinking in 1983, my first summer,
Hmm.
well, am I going to dare not to, say, rotivate the soil or do any kind of soil cultivation? I didn't really have time to think about it much, but it was probably just as well. I just didn't. And then come 1984, and everything grew really well, and I carried on, and it's been like that. Different market gardens. I've moved around for various reasons, so that's been great to give me experience of different soils. Like I've gardened on clay in France. I bought a small farm actually in 1991, and it was some of the most horrible clay anyone could
Oh,
want to look at.
yeah.
And that worked with no dig. So, you know, that gave me the confidence to realize that it can suit all soils. My first soil was stony brash, and the third soil was kind of clay loam. Homemakers is silty loam over clay. So I've seen quite a few, and basically no dig it's a principle which I would say is universally applicable, but there's always exceptions. Not quite
Yeah.
universal.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into no dig here. So, you know, really, ultimately, you know, I mean, you're kind of talking there too, you know, in your garden story, leading up to how, you know, you're kind of learning things along the way that kind of leads you to all of this. What are some of so, you know, what are some of those real essential keys to no dig gardening that gardeners should understand?
Okay, so I would say one big one is question everything, because
Yeah.
at first, you know, I was daring to do something different, and I didn't really have any backup or anything, and
Hmm.
it worked. It clearly worked, but it
Yeah.
still wasn't really being acknowledged or anything. But then I thought, what about other things that we're told to do that, you know, maybe like an example is 4-year rotation, you know, being organic starting in the 80s, you know, that was axiomatic that you would do that. Where does it come from? You know, why 4? I just started questioning so many things, and that leads you to really interesting uh, places, because it frees up your mind, frees up your possibility of doing things differently. Like, I don't know if you knew, but the 4-year rotation comes from the Earl of Norfolk in 1733 in Norfolk in England, and it was his improvement on the medieval 3-year rotation. So, you know, even then they were still following the medieval wheat, barley, fallow. This is farming,
Yeah.
and he added a year of turnips and clover for his sheep, and that was kind of revolutionary at the time. And it worked really well. It got more fertility into the ground, and he had some wool as well. Yeah, all the sort of things that are absolutely not relevant at all to gardening. But this was 1730s farming, and then somehow that
Yeah.
number 4 has stuck, and like we still got it in many places. And I just think, why don't we question things more? And I know some people do 7-year rotations, 11-year rotation, but here I'm trialing a 0-year rotation. So I've got
Okay.
various beds I do that on. One is potatoes. So last year was the 10th year of growing potatoes in the same place. And I do also I grow second early potatoes because they harvest by middle of July,
How
and then
many
I can
years
grow
in a
something
row?
like leeks.
How many
What?
years? How many years in a row?
10.
So 10 years, same spot. You're growing potatoes there.
Yeah, every April I plant Charlotte potatoes second early,
Okay.
harvest them every July. They're super healthy. The abundance level is similar. The average 44 kilos. What's that? About 110 pounds from 6.5 square meters. That's about 65 square feet or something like that. Yeah, just really decent yield of potatoes and super
Wow.
quality. And then I keep seed. That's the other thing. I keep a few potatoes to plant the following April. And I don't know if it's the same with you, but here, you know, you're always told you shouldn't do that in case of disease or virus, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
I think there's a lot of fear in gardening
Yeah,
advice. You know, it's
I do that
lurking
every
there.
year myself. I do that same thing every
Right.
year myself right here in Southern Oregon.
Excellent. Right.
It
That's good to hear.
works just fine for me. In fact,
Yeah. Yeah,
I've
exactly.
got 5 different piles right back behind everybody right now, of
Super. Yeah,
all my
mine are
different
out there.
varieties.
Yeah.
Just waiting to get out
Yeah.
there here real soon.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. And so you've got to dare to try these things. Maybe 1 year something might happen for whatever reason, and it doesn't mean the whole. You have to throw the whole idea out the window. Just keep going with different methods. I water much less than is often recommended. People say I use a lot of compost. That you need a lot of compost for no digging. I don't agree with that, actually, because if you look at older gardening before fertilizers, before artificial fertilizer, they were using, I reckon, about the same amount I'm using now. I think it's pretty much what Elliot Coleman reckons, which is 40 tons an acre. I'll be corrected on that if I'm wrong, but it's of that order if you add up the totals of what we're putting on here, and it works out about an inch on top of the bed, every year. And the other thing that leads to an interesting thought is or realization that compost is not fertilizer, because I'm putting it on whether I'm going to sow carrots or plant cabbage or leeks or onions, whatever, because it's about feeding the soil life, not feeding the plant. So it's not about compost is spreading nutrients, which it does indirectly, but not directly. You've got to get the soil life busy and working and happy, and then they will sort out the nutrients. And a really strong example of that is where I grow every year. I sow carrots on late March, early April. Then they come up and all being well, so there's no slugs. Last year I had to re-sow twice, actually. But by the 11th of April, I got my carrots in the ground and growing. And then 18th of June, first harvest, I harvested enough to make a little hole in the carrot bed to plant a Brussels sprout. And there's enough space for the Brussels to grow, even though it's almost smothered by carrots. And we keep harvesting carrots, making more space for the Brussels. And by the end of July, the carrots are harvested, and we then get fantastic Brussels sprouts. But what I'm leading to is how I'm growing what's called a light feeder and a heavy feeder in the same ground in the same year, with no application of new fertility, if you like, compost, whatever. It just shows that way of looking at fertility and feeding plants. While it has some merit if you're growing in containers where the root run's limited, I think in soil it's nothing like so relevant, and it's more about getting life into your soil in a healthy way.
Yeah. I mean, and again, too, one of those, of course, I was encouraged by folks like yourself and other people that I watched videos and things as I was early on starting to garden myself. But for me, even, I found it interesting, the no dig method, even as a small space gardener. I don't have very much in-ground space, to be digging up anyways, right? So for me, I thought it was kind of interesting as I was doing my containers. I've got these elevated raised beds on a cemented back patio, right? I've got these wicking buckets, to utilize capillary action, and to make sure I don't, I get self-watering buckets, you know what I mean? That sort of thing, right? So, but for me, I was kind of interested in the no dig idea was because of the whole purpose is like you're saying, we're trying to build up and encourage the life inside of the soil. The more life, the more things that are going on, that whatever they're, that competition that's going on inside of our soil, what results from that is what gives us these really great plants, you know what I mean? Because of the relationship the roots have with all of that that's going on in the soil, right? And so I was really, I was like, well, okay, so instead of changing out or doing certain things with the containers I have, I just started letting them sit and started just utilizing this sort of idea. I let them sit through the winter time, if I'm letting them sit and not do anything, or I would just apply some sort of more compost to them, put in the next plant, that sort of thing. And then the next time again, and I would just keep piling more compost onto the top, just more compost onto the top. And of course, with some containers, eventually, like some of the ones, they're going to age or sort of things, especially like elevated containers and things like that. So eventually you might have to change it, but I got years worth of containers out there that just keep going. And what I notice is that my plants start doing better after I get into like year 2, year 3. as I'm just starting to really allow for. And in my containers, I've got worms living in there. I've got things going on and all that sort of stuff. And I found it actually, just that sense of what you're trying to encourage naturally in your soil works even in the small space gardening I was doing as well too. So that's when it really hit me how really kind of valuable the idea itself is to really kind of encourage the natural process in our soil. Like you said, by amending with composts and things like that in order to not feed the plants, but to give those microorganisms and those sort of things within the soil, the fungi and all of that, the sort of things that they need to thrive.
Yeah,
The root
I think
systems
there is one
thrive, and
difference
then the
though with
plants thrive, right?
yeah. I think there is one difference with containers though. That's you haven't got the breakdown happening deep below in the rock and the subsoil,
Right.
because
There's going
plants
to be.
root actually much more deeply, I think, than is often imagined. And
Mhm.
sometimes people say to me, "Oh, you're just doing patio gardening on the soil because your plants are growing in the compost; they're not rooting into the soil." And that's totally not the case, because they are going down and using all of that soil, and the life is continually bringing up stuff from below. One of the nicest comments I had about container gardening was actually from a guy in Tasmania, and he was using an old bath. And it sounds like that works really well, because I think there's a bit more volume in an old bath.
Yeah,
And he was growing carrots in that bath every single year, and he's just putting a bit of seaweed and compost on top, keeping the level really full. So yeah, there's many ways you can do it, and I love that about gardening, how we can, all of us,
yeah,
experiment
yeah.
all the time, trying different things.
Yeah, yeah, and again, too, you're correct. I mean, it's really going to be about the volume of soil that you can put into
Mm,
any given container. That's going to be how much breakdown you're going to get into those deeper
yeah.
parts. I do have one talking about carrots that I grow carrots in every year, and it's probably about, I would say, 2.5, 3 feet deep. So
Ah, right. Okay.
it's a deep one. And again, too, that soil has been breaking down inside of that deep container for, I think that one's been up and running with the bottom on it for about 7 years now. And yeah, I get really good carrots out of them each and every year. Love it.
Lovely.
I, perfect for, just because I want to grow those big carrots. And when you got a container garden and a cemented patio, having big, deep, long carrots aren't really something you can look forward to very much unless you build out something like this sort of thing. And so that was really my purpose, going there and doing that, having it so deep, is grow carrots.
I'm always encouraging people to start small, in terms of, if you're growing in the ground, not take
Yeah.
out too much space, and then you can crop it more intensively. So, because I keep records with the trials I do, and the no dig bed, every year, 5 feet wide, 16 feet long, gives over 220 pounds of vegetables. That's after they're trimmed and ready for the kitchen. So it's like, how many pounds of vegetables do you eat in the year? It's a nice example. But what I'm doing is I'm repeat cropping or interplanting, keeping the space full the whole time. So, for example,
Mhm.
cucumbers, I've got them sprawling on the ground by, say, August. But then the leaves start to die with mildew, which is totally fine and normal, because they're coming towards
Yeah.
the end of their life here anyway. And I popped some fennel plants in between the cucumbers, and there's enough space as the cucumbers start to die off for the fennel to get established. So you're still picking cucumbers, but you've got the fennel growing. And just those overlaps are really nice thing to do, because again, that's fun to try, and you're doubling up, because you're increasing growing time. Here we're 51 degrees latitude. That's the same as
Yeah.
like Nova Scotia. It's quite a bit more than you, I think. So daylight levels are quite limited. Our growing season, although we're officially zone 8, it's a bit ridiculous, because summers are not hot. And I'm
Yeah.
always looking to increase the growing time by interplanting and double cropping, even triple cropping.
All right. Excellent, excellent. So again, say someone's just kind of new to the idea. Everybody's telling them, no dig gardening's the way to go, and they want to know kind of, where do they start? Where would you start if, say, you're just looking at say your backyard, just for the
Right.
home gardener, they just got a backyard. They want to start a garden, but they want to make sure that they're doing it no dig because they've been advised to
There's
do this. What should they do to get
the
started?
the biggest one at the beginning is weeds, and it depends what you've got. If you're For those anyone starting with what I call a lawn, which is basically where you've been mowing the grass, and it could have weeds in, but it's still, I would call it a lawn, a green
Yeah.
sward. That
Yeah.
simply the cardboard with compost on top, maybe 3-4 inches, which is a lot at the beginning, but for growing vegetables, I found it really worthwhile, and I look on that as an investment because that extra level of compost in the first year actually carries on giving you fertility for years after that, and it saves you so much time because it reduces the amount of time you spend weeding, makes it easier to remove the weeds. The compost makes moisture reserve when you water, so it's a win in so many other ways if you can just manage to find that initial dose of compost. I know for some people that maybe not possible, in which case you've got
Yeah.
to do your no dig with much less compost, but I would
Yeah.
say most people can probably get enough to do even 2 inches on top of the cardboard. But if you
Yeah.
have less compost on the cardboard, then you can't be quite so quick planting up. If you can get 4 to 6 even, then you can plant on the same day you make a lawn. So a bed. If you're listening to this and you've got free time over the weekend, you could start a no dig bed now, and if you've got some lettuce transplants or something, you could put them in straight away. You haven't got to wait for the cardboard to decompose, which takes about 8 to 10 weeks, because there's enough compost for the plants to get going before they need that space below where the cardboard is decomposing. But once the cardboard decomposes, then if there's perennial weeds down below, and I'm always being
Yeah.
asked about Bermuda grass, crabgrass,
Yeah.
convolvulus,
Oh
all
gosh.
the real wicked ones of the garden.
Yeah.
Then you've just got to keep removing them. And I actually have a copper trowel. Uh, Strictly speaking, it's bronze. It's got 5% tin, but it's basically a beautiful piece of kit because it stays smooth and shiny. It doesn't rust, and you can slide it in very easily. And you're not trying to get out the original root, which is too deep to reach, but you lever out the top new growth, the maybe 4-6 inches or so of white new root, and that weakens the plant every time you do that. And
Yeah.
with convolvulus bindweed, we do that every week for 2 years. Get it? 2 years? It's
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
that sounds a lot, and it is a lot, but
It is. Yeah.
assuming you're not moving property, which would be a shame because you've cleaned the ground and you've then got clean space with no convolvulus going to grow there, and that frees up so much time going forwards.
Yeah. And
Caveats to that are the
here's
edges.
another thing real quick just to talk about this. When you talk about some of these real persistent weeds like this, some of these, I mean, you want to talk about no dig. You get in there with a rototiller and you start tilling up some of these weeds that you've got in there, like what is it, the crabgrass or something like that. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
a rototiller
Bermuda
dude.
grass or that sort of stuff. It just
Yeah,
cuts them up into a million pieces and then spreads out a
yeah,
million different plants now. And now you got a million
yeah,
different, really
yeah,
hard to get rid of
yeah,
weeds now. So I
yeah.
mean, they're
It's not the way to go, is it? It really isn't.
not at all.
And the big advantage that I've discovered, which is not really much talked about because I think it hadn't really been realized. The whole thing of if you don't disturb the soil, it doesn't need to grow so many weeds. And why is that? Well, the clue is in the word disturb, because
Yeah.
we now know that soil is an organism. This is
Yeah.
what I've always felt without kind of having the evidence, but
It's also
yeah,
storage.
it's living soil.
Yeah.
It's alive, and if you disturb it in any way, so that means the rototiller, the spade, fork, whatever it is, you're causing damage, and
Mhm.
you're causing an organism to feel discomfort, and
Mhm.
how it needs to heal itself. How does it heal? Or you could use a different word to heal, which would be recover. It needs to recover, and that's another clue in that word, which is soil recovers with weeds. So that for me is an explanation of why with no dig you're going the other way. You're not disturbing it. You just don't see so many weeds, but you do see the existing roots that are still there of perennial weeds growing,
Mhm.
pushing up new shoots, and those are the ones you just need to keep removing until that
Yeah.
original parent root, I call it, just expires because it's exhausted.
Yeah, and just as they were mentioning in the comments there too, is that and I was saying there is that soil is also a storage too for weeds. This is weed seeds will get
Uh-huh.
down into the soil, and when you disturb it, you start kicking up
There's that
old
as well.
seed right up
Yeah,
to the top, right?
yeah,
And so there's
yeah.
another
They stay
problem with
down there.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Keep the weed seeds down there.
Keep them
But
down there.
I must
We'll kick them
emphasize
up.
in this that um, it's not no dig is not it's not a religion. It's not like
Right. I was
you
gonna get
must
into that
never.
too. Exactly, exactly.
But
Because there is
what
that
I'm thinking
element
more is
of it, where I love it, here, I'm gonna just pop this comment up too real quick. Skippy jumped in here too. Mr. Downey been given knighthood? If not, what are they waiting for? But anyways, no, it's great to have
thank you.
brought this sort of information to the forefront. And like you were saying, it's great that it's really gained in some popularity so that people can really start to understand a lot of this sort of stuff. But at the same time, we like you were just saying, we can't really just we can't religify or however that word would be, this any sort of thing when it comes down to it, especially in gardening, when it comes down. But
All right.
but
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
talk
we can all
about
do
that
it
just a
though.
little bit. Talk about that just a little bit more because I think it's good to hear it from you in a sense. I think everybody,
Sorry, talk about what exactly?
that it shouldn't really be a religion, no dig gardening in a
Yeah,
sense.
that's what I want to say.
Because it's really good to come
Because
from you, and to people to hear it from you as
the
well.
the I think it's a tendency that things get given a name, a label, and then that gets misunderstood,
Yeah,
and it needs to be seen as something evolving and always kind of fluid. Or people will say to me, so with no dig, are you allowed to hoe? And there's two things that are interesting in that question. One is the way they phrased it. Are you allowed to? Well, it's not. Nobody's allowing or disallowing anything. What is best for the soil? That's the question you want to ask. There's no rule book out there. Or if you like, the rule book is nature's, and we're just working that out as we go.
yeah,
So hoeing,
exactly.
just to take that example, that's another word. There's so many words in gardening and farming that have many different meanings. And for some people, I think hoeing would be quite a deep hacking of the soil, using a mattock, that kind of thing, because that would disturb the weeds, and then they just keep moving through the soil, hack, 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 and that for me would be a calamity because you're destroying so much life. But if you use what I call a swivel oscillating hoe, I'm sure many of your listeners will know that one. So it has a very thin blade that just cuts through the surface compost actually horizontally, no more than an inch deep. And we hardly ever use it actually because there aren't that many weeds needing to be hoed. But if I do have a flush, that green flush, which could be happening any day now actually at this time of year, because if you spread compost on the ground that has weed seeds, for example, then you've got to watch for it, and you're going to just cut through that surface inch, and that's job done because the weeds are disturbed and they die the next sunny day. You haven't got to remove them or anything. It's a huge time saver if you've got that as an issue. But it's not like, so some people would call that digging. I mean, well, okay, that's where we get lost in the sort of
Right,
mire of
right,
words. But
exactly.
basically, for me, just to go back to a clear definition of no dig, it's minimal disturbance. So,
Yeah, yeah.
occasionally you do need to, but just wherever you
And
don't
really,
need to disturb the soil.
and when I was talking about containers, I think you brought up a great point though too, is because really we're just really trying to create deep
Yeah,
soil life, you know what I mean, in that sort of sense, right? So,
absolutely.
when we're
Yeah,
talking about the top right up here, there's a lot of stuff going on right there in those first
yeah.
few inches or whatever. But really, the purpose of all of that we're doing on the top is to get that stuff to work its way down and not to disturb all of this stuff back down here so
Well,
that
through the
those
soil life, you
roots
could say,
start getting down deep where they
yeah,
really intend and want to go and find the resources that they need there.
you could say that the soil life is disturbing soil. If you want to be
Yeah,
pedantic about it, but it's doing it in its own way, and like
I mean,
worms,
worms are
earthworms
in there
create.
doing some tilling
Yeah, exactly.
and around and all that, right?
And then all the eating and excreting that's going on in the soil, it's kind of fascinating to think about, actually, that, but it's entirely beneficial, but it's a very permanent structure that is created and very durable. So that's why you can walk on beds, when they're no dig, because the structure is so firm, and firm is not the same as compacted. I mean, that's another word that causes massive confusion, I find, because people have been told that, your soil's got to be really loose and fluffy. So they think if it's not, they think it must be compacted, but no, that's not the case at all. Compacted, truly compacted, means damaged, and that's usually by excessive weight in really wet conditions. So that'd be like, on a building site, that sort of thing. And people who buy new houses and they've got a so-called garden that the builder sort of cobbled together by putting something nice on top of really damaged soil. Sometimes it needs forking just to loosen that and get some
Yeah.
air back in it. And so there's exceptions, all
Yeah,
around
because
it. That's where you
yeah.
need just these understandings.
So then again too, we're talking like you're just getting started, right? And you're looking
Yeah,
at then we
yeah,
also kind of got to judge what is the ground we're actually starting with,
yeah. And the best
right?
clue for
Because
that,
it could
is
need some forking. It could need to get in because you might
yeah,
need to get stuff down in there first, then
yeah. But I
start
would say
allowing, right?
it's pretty rare. I don't want to give the impression it's a commonly necessary thing, because
Right, right.
one guideline for me is weeds. If you see strong weeds growing, that's a sign of healthy soil.
Yeah, yeah.
Rejoice if you've got really big,
Right, right.
vigorous weeds, because they've got roots. They're not floating in midair. So that it's pretty rare that you would need to fork. But yeah, I am just saying it might in a few occasions be necessary, and sometimes it's a good thing to do
Yeah.
as a one-off at the beginning.
There you go. Don't get too carried away with it there.
Yeah, yeah.
Right on, right on. So any more that we should know about this ultimately, again, like
The,
I just
there are two ways of killing weeds, and with no dig, and one is the cardboard on the ground with the compost on top.
okay, yeah.
And the other one I use occasionally is compost on first, or any kind of organic matter, actually, just something to feed soil life. It could be seaweed, it could be
Right.
tree leaves. But if you got compost, that's great. It has a quicker result.
Right.
But then you put black plastic on top, and that's why I put that up in a video last week. And oh boy, that gets a few comments as well, because plastic is seen as a no-no in some
Yeah.
quarters, which I
Yeah,
do understand. But it's a
absolutely.
bit like in gardening, where you can't be perfect,
Mhm.
because are we never going to use a plastic pot ever again? All this kind of thing. It's
Yeah,
actually not that easy. And
it
so
is.
I like to keep the use of plastic to a minimum, but acknowledge that sometimes it's really useful. And it's a way of actually gaining in other ways. So like not having the plastic on top of really difficult weeds like, say, crabgrass, convolvulus bindweed, and so on. You're not having to disturb the soil in any way. So you big gain there, but you have
Yeah.
got the plastic for just say one summer. It's not on all the time, not forever. I
Yep.
hate that. I don't like using plastic all the time. I don't like using woven polypropylene either. The stuff that breaks into strands and threads when you cut it, because that's very polluting. So I'm just
Yeah.
using straight black plastic, which is actually much cheaper. And then people ask,
Yeah.
well, how does the water get through then? And in fact, it's amazing how, from experience, I can say it does, but enough, because you've made holes to put your plants in, and
Yeah.
the water sort of runs around when it rains, that kind of thing. And also the plastic retains humidity that's there. Just make sure you put it on moist soil, not on dry soil at the very beginning.
Yeah, yeah. And again, too, I mean, yeah, there's things that we want to discourage. You want to discourage like so much mass use of plastic and that sort of stuff, but it's just too hard to as gardeners and in general for a lot of other gardeners to avoid that sort of stuff, especially when people are
It is.
gardening on budgets and all that sort of stuff as well too.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
it just gets to be something at that point. We do want to
Well, I mean,
minimize it. We want to minimize it the best we
yeah,
can. We want to,
yeah,
that
that's where
sort
we
of
got to
thing.
start.
And then
And
sometimes, like you're talking about, it just works best in that sort of practice.
yeah, sure. And also, if you don't succeed with your food growing because you're being very purist about how you do it, then you're going to be going to the supermarket and buying stuff wrapped in plastic. It's that kind of thing. So
Right.
I feel the best solution has to come from grow your own, however whatever it takes. But do it no dig. That's a lot easier. Saves
Yeah.
time. You don't need fertilizer. I'd use any synthetic products at all on my soil to
Mhm.
help plants grow. But the big benefit will be you'll get health. Yeah,
Yeah.
and what is that worth? uh, uh, that's such a net gain through the microbes in the ground, through being in the garden. All the things that we gardeners know, which I think larger scale farmers are missing out on a bit. I do feel there's a big differentiation between
Mhm.
farming and gardening. I don't know if those words are used in the same way in the States, but
Yeah.
here, farmers are people who tend to have big tractors. They sit in their tractor a lot. They're
Yeah.
tilling the land and all
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But they're not doing so much handwork, and that's where we have the benefit. We're surrounded by soil. You get the Bacillus vaccae. They're the bacteria that interact with our brain to make serotonin, and
Mhm.
just loads of feel good, moody things about being in the
Yeah.
garden. That's why I personally I feel it's really important to make that differentiation between farming and gardening, because there's so many differences, and it leads to so much confusion if you merge them together.
Yeah, yeah. I was listening to something you were talking about the other day though too, and I did kind of want to ask you that as you were touching on that a second ago. Your garden's amazing. You got a nice large space. I mean, it's just an
Thank you.
amazing market garden. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure most people who are in the chat right now have watched or seen some of your videos and your garden and all of that. That's great. But it's a big market garden. I mean, you're growing for market. This is a big market garden. And what I was hearing you talk about was that what the practice you utilize works up to a certain scale, right? And then as you get kind
Yeah,
of bigger than that, it just
yeah,
becomes a little bit untenable.
yeah. The reason is it's economics. It's not the practicality so much, but
Right. Okay.
when you
Yeah.
get into bigger, what I'm doing is growing high value crops, because I've got to pay for the time input of doing it by hand.
Mhm.
And if you scale up beyond about an acre, maybe 2 acres, it gets more difficult, because how many high value crops can you sell altogether? If you
Yeah.
can sell them, then I think it's feasible. And but here anyway, for the scale I want to go on, I would say 1 acre maximum. Back in the 80s, I had 7.5 acres of no dig beds, and
Okay. Yeah.
boy did we work
Cool.
hard. I had 4 people working for me. But in those days, the sale price of vegetables was higher in real terms than it is now.
Right.
I
Right.
found that really sobering and not a very nice thought. In other words, that's why growers are more and more struggling to make a living, because we've all got to buy petrol and insurance
Mhm.
and vehicles and so on and all that kind of thing. But compared to the cost of those, the price of food is actually less and less. It might sound amazing if you're used to buying food. I think that's
Yeah.
because the margins of people who sell it. But as a grower, what you sell it for is it's not that impressive actually. So that's why,
Yeah.
if I wanted to grow, say, potatoes, no digging, with the methods I'm using, it would work, but it wouldn't be economic. That's the difference. But lettuce
Yeah.
and herbs and cucumbers and spinach and chard and kale, that works at the moment.
Yeah, yes. And again too, then also larger scale. I think one of the bigger points is that you're working hard. So this requires manpower. No dig gardening and these
Yeah,
sort of methods aren't really conducive to machine work, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
you
That's
need
it.
people to do this sort of stuff. And then when it comes to larger farm practices or businesses in that sort of sense like that, labor at that level would be something that would be something you would definitely avoid as far as the economics are concerned.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. Like, because I've used machinery. I grew up on a farm, and I drove tractors and things like that. And there's something about machines on and install that just grates with me. It doesn't feel right. And so, yeah, I'm just always looking for the hand option. The only petrol
Yeah.
engine I have here is a lawnmower, actually. But having said that, I'm just about to buy a small shredder,
Oh,
chipper,
there
I
you
should say,
Yeah, yeah.
a wood
That's a good
chipper,
one. I
because
got one
we're
of those. That's probably one of my only
okay.
machines too. That's probably one of the
Yeah,
only
I mean,
ones I really got to use.
I'm interested to try growing, just for experiment, growing a bit more in wood chip. I don't know if you followed it at all, but the uh,
Yeah.
Japanese kinchan method. I'm not saying
Mm,
I like it or anything necessarily, or
yeah.
know much about it, but I want to
That's
try something
interesting.
along those lines. Yeah, exactly, and it's for me for learning as well, and then I can share that with other
Yeah.
people. So much about the mycelia. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and again, too, this was just one of those things that for me is in gardening practice over those early years, I started to learn and then started incorporating more and more over the years to where even in my small space, urban alleyway gardens and what we've got
Great.
here, I try to make things as regenerative as possible. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Is I'm trying to utilize everything. So down tree limbs and things like that,
Yeah.
leaves, that are coming in from the neighborhood and all that.
Yeah.
So again,
Yeah.
too, I got neighbors, and whenever I see them, they're hacking their bushes and stuff. I'm grabbing things up to put it into my chipper so I can chip it down and lay it around in my different stuff that I've got for in-ground stuff to continue to keep making sure the mulch is good and all of that too. And just utilizing those sort of practices instead of any of this other input, because ultimately, really, here's the thing. And this is the thing I try to tell people that I learned the biggest thing about it is that once I started utilizing these sort of practices, man, the expenses of my gardening went way down.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
I mean, for a lot of people, gardening can seem like an expensive activity because of all of
Yeah.
these different things. And, like you said, machines or,
For me,
tillers and edgers, whatever
yeah.
it is, or
Yeah.
fertilizers and
Yeah.
fungicides on that end, but all of this different stuff a new gardener thinks that they're gonna need to take on this hobby. We learned quickly that we didn't need any of it really. The
Just
gardening's
some
a
compost.
natural process. Build your own compost, mulch good, do these sort of things, and you've now got a really inexpensive garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good, huh? All right, let's see here too. One of the things that you mentioned to me too is that in April you do have a book coming out, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you got a book coming out. That's right. We love
It's
to talk
called
about books
Energy.
around here on the Let's Get Growing show too. So maybe down the road, maybe we'll have to have you back on for a book talk or something like that. But yeah, you got a new book coming out in April called Energy Gardening.
Yeah. And it's a subject I've become particularly fascinated by recently, but I've been doing it all my life in different ways. Like so, harnessing basically energies that in our modern world science struggles to measure. So
Mm,
it's hard to name them even because they don't always have a name. But to give you one example, I do a thing with putting 5 sticks around my property to make a solar energy field. And what it does is it enables the soil to pull more energy from the sun and turn that into warmth. And I noticed today I was at an event elsewhere and I came back and the car temperature was reading, thermometer was reading 48 Fahrenheit, 48, and I got closer to here and the village here I think is a nicely situated and it perhaps quite warm already of itself and it went up to 50. But then I got a weather station in my garden and I had a look at that. The time I got back, it was 52 degrees here. So I think that's just from what I'm doing with these 5 sticks, and I explain how you do that in the book. It's basically takes 20 minutes to do. It's like costs you nothing. Yeah, that's why you're not going to hear about methods like this. It's like there's nobody can make any money out of it. There's no advertising potential revenue. And in the book, I just cover quite a few simple things like that, like water. Improving the quality of water. We all use water in gardening. Our plants use water. And so if you can make it water that's more available to plant roots, and there's a simple magnetic device you can get. That one's called Plant Surge actually, or Abimax, the different variations of it. But then, using something like that that's not expensive, that leads you to more things. You start thinking, well, what water? It's such a basic thing that we all take for granted. We're taught in school it's just H2O, blah blah blah. And if I talk about this on a video, that's the sort of comment I'll get sometimes. What are you talking about? It's just like water's H2O, end of story. But actually, it's not. And there's a fourth phase of water, and that was discovered by a professor in your part of the world, in Seattle, I think, Seattle University. God, I'm struggling for his name. The fourth phase of water is his book. It came out in 2012, and
mm.
that what people who are managing to create that are finding the plants grow better. And I found that with using the magnetic devices. That's what it does basically. I get better results in my polytunnel
Yeah,
than
yeah.
I was before. Also, it
If
softens
I
the water.
remember that book, email me and let me know there too, because I'd love to look at that,
Yeah, right.
especially
Oh
someone
God, I
local
will.
for
The
sure.
fourth phase of water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Gerald. Oh God, I struggle a bit with names. Yeah. Anyway, but
How about this right here? Water is life, Dr.
yeah,
Gerald
you got
Pollack.
it. Gerald Pollack.
There
Yeah,
we go.
Gerald
Perfect.
Pollack.
Thank you.
Well, he's written
Thank
a
you,
few
Eli.
actually. Yeah. And then, you know, if you're on social media, have a look at Vida Alston in New Zealand and what she does with micro freezing water and the patterns it creates. You know, that opens our eyes. It should do anyway to, you know, the possibilities of water has memory. We're working with it all the time. Another one would be stirring water to make vortices. There was an Austrian forester called Victor Schauberger who made lots of amazing discoveries about water. He's the guy who invented copper tools. Using copper really can help make a lot of difference. They're a bit more expensive, but they don't rust, so you know they last a long time. And energizing water through stirring it into vortices. Schauberger talks a lot about that. Yeah, this might start sounding a bit esoteric, but all I know is that I've been using these methods in my garden in a practical sense. You know, I'm more of a gardener than a theorist, and if I like the sound of something, I'll try it out before I actually want to learn too much about it. Because if it doesn't work, there's no point. And so these are things that I found are effective. And what I'm doing in them, it's just a booklet. It's 32 pages, but I would say it has a lot of nuggets of really useful information that are going to boost your crops and save you money.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's I have to check that out when it comes out. Again, like I said, we love books around here.
It's can I just say it's self-published, and that
Perfect.
my imprint, self-published. No Dig Garden is the imprint I use. It'll be on Amazon, I'm sure, but probably not until the end of April.
Okay, excellent. And that's something that people could probably find when it comes out too as well, right? It's your website and through your channel and all that as well too. And of course, we got links right down below in the description for all of that too. Let's see here. I had a question or two here a little earlier here, so let's drop in a couple of these real quick. Rick, our good friend Rick from Australia asks, Charles, how is your worm farm? It's grown. Do you do worms? Do some worm farming?
Yeah, I have a worm farm on the ground, which is very simple to run because we simply put a bit of half-finished compost on top about once a week, and the worms come up and eat it. And because the worm farm is on the ground, not in buckets or boxes, if they're more resistant to temperature change, it just reduces the time needed to look after them. And then I'm finding that using that worm cast, we empty it just once a year actually, and then keep it in sacks, and it really vitalizes the potting mix I use. So for propagation, because that's another thing I'm doing more and more actually. Is I'm inventing stuff like the module trays I designed, and they're small cells. So you need a really good compost, and I found it in those cells, it's incredible the size of plant we can grow in just that small volume of compost. And the advantage of propagation is you don't need so much space in your propagating area to grow, you know, plenty of decent stuff. And then the seedlings pop out easily. You haven't got to throw away the tray, and so on and so on. So there's lots of benefits going forwards. But yeah, worm for that is really good.
Yeah. I'm huge on worm castings over the years. One of the things that people know about me though too is that I'm actually pretty new to actually farming my own worms and producing my own worm castings here. So and again too, it's another one of those things, another part of the process of learning for me as well too, in the sense of how, for one, how do I make my garden more budget friendly in a way? Because here I was ordering and bringing in these worm castings from other places, the garden center and other resources for worm castings, but that can get kind of spendy, when you're trying to do that. And lo and behold, raising worms is not that expensive of a thing. It's not really that hard of a thing, and there's lots of ways to do it too. Like you said, you're doing an in-ground version of this. I've got kind of an in-ground in compost pile type worm farm, whatever it is really, but we feed the worms, food scraps out there for that. I've got
that is the other thing though. If you leave a compost heap, if you leave a compost heap long enough, you will get worm casts, so I do that sometimes.
And then you just increase the activity by feeding them even more like just really good food scraps inside, just really good
Yeah.
chunks of it, like right in the center, and they just come out of it. They take care of it all.
Yeah,
And,
sure.
and again, it's not a hot compost pile, so we're not, it's just a cold one, and they're doing great out there. I got ones that go inside of like this large container I've got. So I got one that goes down in it, so it's kind of an in container worm bin. And I've got your regular worm bins and that sort of stuff. But that was a big lesson learned, was and not only that, getting your own worm castings and farming your own worm castings is just amazing.
Yeah,
And
great.
and one of the best things you can do for not just the regular soil. You can make some cool teas that I did this last year, which were just really amazing. But like you said, a great additive to potting mixes and things like that as well too. Ready Ant asked again too. You just mentioned this actually, Charles. Where can we buy those stiff plastic seedling trays you use? They have the big hole in the
Well,
bottom. So easy
there
to
is
push them out. What do we search for? CharlesDowding.com, right?
it will have my name, Charles Dowding module tray. They might be called CD60 or CD30 or CD15. That's a reference number of holes in each tray. Module cells, I should say. All About the Garden in Houston, if you're in the North America, is the main distributor. We are still looking for someone in Canada, actually, but it needs someone to come forward who's prepared to take delivery of a pallet. I've got someone to
Right,
stock them
exactly.
and then resell them. So if any of your listeners know
any
someone
Canadians
like
out
that,
there
or
want to make some money on some Charles Dowding trays,
yeah, exactly.
get a
Go
hold
for
of
it.
Charles for sure. He's waiting for your phone call
Because
or text
there's
message
quite a
or
network now
email.
all over the world. We've got someone in Australia, Tasmania actually, and
Okay, excellent.
all over Europe, different countries. So yeah, it depends where you are, but hopefully you can find them.
Yeah. Excellent. What? So like I said, you like inventing and thinking some things like that. So what came about, and how did these trays come about?
Sorry, how did I what?
How did the idea for? I can kind of guess, but what? How did the idea for the trays to make your own line of
Yeah, well,
feeding trays come
because
about?
I've been using module trays all my life, and
Mhm.
back in the 80s we had polystyrene ones, which now is not allowed, I think, because it's not so ecological. And actually, they did work well, but they were quite big amount of compost to fill each one. But they had an enormous hole at the bottom, and that taught me that you can have a hole that's almost as big as actually the block of compost, and it's good because that means you always got good drainage and you've got air at the bottom for the roots. And the worst thing for roots is being in a tightly sealed plastic container with not much air hole at the bottom. And so I've designed my trays in have the maximum size hole in proportion to still quite a small
Yeah.
volume of compost, but it means that the drainage is good, the air is good, and it's much harder to waterlog the roots. I think that's where one of the biggest problems arises from, because particularly beginners, and I don't mean this in a critical way, but it's what I see, tend to overwater, and I think it's just human nature. You want to help
Mhm.
your plants. You think the surface needs to be always moist. If you see it a little bit dry, they need some water. Often they don't. It's better to let the compost in a module cell or a plastic pot as well dry out a bit. And when even tomatoes, I found, like, by April they're starting to get quite big in just a 3-inch pot or something like that. And again, don't keep it fully saturated because the roots need air. And
Mhm.
sometimes if I lift up my pots, I know roughly what level of weight I'm expecting. And if I feel, God, that's really heavy, I'll hold off watering for a couple of days. And cucumbers in particular, I've learned the hard way. I've killed so many cucumber and melon plants by overwatering. Don't do that
Yes.
either. So just hold back on. But that's why with the ones I design, I deliberately big hole, small
Yep.
volume of compost, because that reduces waterlogging possibility. And the whole thing just fits nicely. And then the easy removal. So it's polypropylene, which is a very hard plastic. They're trays you could
Mhm.
even drive on, you can't break them. But that means they're going to last you for a very long time. It's a good investment, and it's a single-use plastic, but it will give you year after year after year. And actually, often I'm using trays 6 times, 10 times in a year, because you know it's just 3 weeks often to raise a plant in a module. So you plant it out, and then you can refill the tray and grow something else in it. So that, you know, they're very efficient, practical.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And again, too, you just kind of saw a need and put something together, and
Yeah. Well, it got me
now
thinking that, you know, I think as gardeners, we're in a strong position to know what we want, but we
mhm,
don't always have the means to do it. And I was lucky to be working with ContainerWise, this company who already made the trays, and you know, credit to them. I think they could see the possibility of getting me involved in designing a new one. And I'm actually we're producing now a seed tray along similar lines, which is the kind of tray that you might, you know, a box, a shallow box. They're often too deep. This one's going to be more shallow, and it has loads more holes, and they're really big. We're going to see how that goes, because I'm finding if I fill a tray with potting mix and sow some lettuce seed, it's quite easy to get it too waterlogged, and the roots just die, and that's called
yeah,
damping off. And you know, so that it needs someone with more practical knowledge, I think, sometimes to design these things. And I'm just looking at watering can. That's
yeah.
the new project as well. So yeah, there's lots in the pipeline.
Yeah, yeah, and again too, like you said, that you know, we're in the garden doing things and all of that,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so there's
yeah,
always these things where, oh man, this would work better if this, you know, this was
yep,
just this way, or in this case is why are all these darn seedling trays so dang flimsy and ridiculous and just
yeah.
wear away after a couple of seasons, and
Well, exactly.
buying
There's
new
a lot of
ones and all of that,
yeah,
and now with those,
yeah,
you buy them once and you're probably not gonna need to buy them again.
yeah, yeah. That built-in obsolescence, isn't it? That's what they want. So
Yep. Oh,
that's
yeah.
definitely not the road I'm. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It is kinda hard to fight against that sort of stuff in the world we live in today, right? As we kinda get back into that plastics type of thing as well too. It's so hard to avoid this stuff because it's just thrown at us in
yeah,
so many different
yeah.
ways that,
Actually, wood,
but
wood has possibilities. I think more like you know, I've designed. I mean, it's designed. It's not much to it, you could say, but it's a long-handled wooden dibber, and actually that's sold as well by All About the Garden in Houston. But it does have amazing advantages if you could get that end just the right shape, and it's not pointed, because with no dig you don't need the point on a dibber. This is to make holes for transplanting, so it's more rounded and quite fat actually, and it's beautiful to use because it's 2 inches thick, the stick. It's gonna, again, it should last you your lifetime. And some people say, well, that's a rip-off, you know, you're selling a stick, and it's true, but there's more to it than that. And I'm always saying that, make your own. You know, you can see the picture there, just make your own. You could do that from
Yeah,
an old
yeah.
tool handle or something. So yeah,
Exactly,
you know,
exactly. If you can
all
find a way
these,
to doing it yourself, go for it, that's for sure, but it's, you know, it's the practicality in the matter.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Not everyone's got a workshop or whatever it might be, but that's something
Yeah.
else I'd always encourage is, you know, be creative and
Mhm.
make your own tools. There's nothing better. I had a friend who was looking at making his own copper trowel, and he used the biggest copper pipe he could find, the diameter of something like 1.5 inches, crazy, and he cut
Yeah.
it down the middle, opened it out, and he had a sort of trowel shape that he attached a homemade wooden handle to. You know, that kind of thing
Yeah.
is just fantastic and fun to
Yeah.
try and do.
And it gives us a chance to be just a little bit more creative and use some of
Yeah,
our other abilities that we have and everything.
yeah.
One of
It's
those ones that
empowering.
yeah, empowering. I love that, and I wanna get back
That's
to
a really
real
key
quick
word.
with
I
those.
think we need to use this word power more, because that goes back
Yeah,
to energy. You know, if
yeah,
we empower ourselves, we empower other people. Uh, that gives you confidence and it got health as well. And that
mhm,
relates to the gut, I think. You know, and we're learning how gut microbes are so similar to soil
yeah,
microbes. That's one of the big advantages of growing and eating your own food. And when your gut is fully working, that gets your brain fired up, and everything starts to flow more. And that is empowering because you're then more capable of kind of taking charge of your life and not letting the media do it or whatever, you know. So and
yeah, yeah,
that gets us
exactly.
in a good place. So yeah.
Yeah, and that word empowering, that's one I use all the time because that's exactly what I felt, you know,
Oh,
that,
great.
first time I grew my own food, you know?
Ah,
I
brilliant.
love
Yeah.
plants, I've always loved plants, I've been a plant person the whole life, my mother kinda raised me as, you know, doing house plants and all of that like you see here, and
Oh yeah.
so I've always kinda had that through my adult life, but as I was talking with, Eli earlier, it wasn't until, like, my mid-30s, you know, you know, I'm just participating in a commercial world, buying my groceries at the grocery store, getting my lettuce at the produce section, and buying my cucumbers and stuff like that. And it just so happens, that cucumbers are one of my daughter's favorite things to eat. And a friend showed up one day with a little cucumber start, and I was up for the challenge. I never grew up anything that was a food bearing plant before, but I grew these cucumbers, and it was that moment sitting there with my daughter, and she was eating these cucumbers I grew. I mean, I was eating them with her, and I just mentioned to her, I was like, hey, I grew those, right? And it blew
It's
her
lovely
mind
when
up.
you can share it with your children, isn't it? And it's like, funnily enough, cucumbers are my daughter's favorite food, and we have many jokes about that when she was growing up, and that she was always desperate for the start of the cucumber season because it's a very precise time of year.
And here I was raising her in that same way, though, too, because she looked at me like amazed, like, you grew this, no way, kind of thing. We get cucumbers at the store, right? And I'm like, no, the plant out on the balcony. I grew that all summer. We're eating these cucumbers now. And it was that moment for me, though, was watching her kind of surprise in that, and like that whole thing. And then it just kind of hit me.
Brilliant.
I was like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I just grew my own food, and
Yeah,
then
and
all of a sudden my life changed because of that word you used, empowering. I felt completely empowered at that moment. I was feeding my own kid, you know what I mean, with food that I grew and produced myself, through my own effort. It wasn't just going to the store and picking something up. I grew this and we were eating it. And at that moment, I was just like, wow, wait a minute. And again, it was just this empowering moment where now I'm a gardener. And now I'm a gardener. I want to grow everything.
Yeah, right. Well, it's a good time of year to be, especially if you're a beginner listening to this, that you've got all those opportunities coming right up. And I reckon if you are beginners, one of the easiest things to do is grow potatoes, and just stick a potato in the ground and see what happens. That's a revelation when it comes to harvest, isn't it? Because you don't see them until you pull the plant, and
It's so great.
there.
And that's such a good suggestion too, because there you go. I mean, just go to the organic. You can literally just go to the organic section of your supermarket somewhere, get one of those fun, cool looking potatoes you really like, grab a handful of those, go stick them in your garden, and grow them out, and then see how fun gardening is when you're producing your own food and everything.
I like potatoes also because they're so quick. So sweet potatoes, because it's a big thing, so it does grow quickly. And if you grow the earlier types, the harvest is by midsummer, and then you can still transplant, particularly if you've got plants starts already. You could put in broccoli or beetroot, cabbage, so you can get two decent amounts of food in from one area. And I find the potatoes that we harvest in July here, I make sure they're dry, put them in paper sacks, and I just keep them in a shed. As long as it's frost free, they must be in the dark or they'd go green. So they're dry, frost free, and we're still eating them now in March, from harvest last July. So many possibilities.
Storage crops are the best, aren't they? Right? We were talking about this. We were talking about this last week. Is that it's food and in the growing experience, kind of as I just shared it there, with my daughter early on. But growing food is in the empowerment we get through that the process of that food and what it goes to. So we get and grow a lot of stuff, tomatoes and things, and we pull them from the plant, either immediately process them and do that sort of stuff. But I love storage crops in that sort of sense, like a good squash or potatoes or things like that you grow it and then you kind of set it aside. And then here it is months later. Now you're actually starting to, you're eating it. You're getting to, get to enjoy this process that you undertook that last year, that food story has continued all the way to that point where you're getting to enjoy it, at this later time. I think it's great. It's so awesome. Growing food and gardening in general, as we talked with our earlier guests, though, too. It doesn't matter if you're a food gardener or whatever. If you enjoy gardening, it's an empowering thing. It can bring us closer to nature, which I think is such a huge thing for us as human beings right now, as we're moving into these next phases of our existence here on our planet, is that it's these generations right now who've really got to push this point to our coming generations, that a connection with nature is important. Always seek it. And one of the best ways you can do that is by being a gardener. There's so many ways to just find fulfillment and empowerment and all that stuff through this, right?
Yep. And in fact, I need to go and get my beauty sleep now.
Absolutely. I know
it's
I
late.
got you up late. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Because I mean, you're just right on time though, too, because I was about ready to finish up. But anyways, real quick, everybody here, go and check out Charles Dowding's links down below in the description. Maybe go find and see, unless you're in Canada, go see if you can get one of those seed trays or something. But and look forward to his book coming out here real soon. Thanks again, Charles, for spending some time with us and hanging out with us and talking about all of this here. I know it's getting late over there. I kind of forget about that because I'm just getting my day started here pretty much. It's just afternoon for me. So I got to remember.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure. And nice to meet you also. I'll say cheerio.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Charles. Thank you so much for being with us here today. And again, I'd love to have you back and talk some more and get into all of this. I mean, there's so much things we can talk about. I can talk about gardening all day long with you. So thanks again for being here, and we'll see you again soon. You have a great day.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Thanks.
All right. There we go. Man, I'm telling you, I was really so looking forward to that conversation today. And just like I said, though, too, there's just so much more. I mean, I could talk to him all day, but then again, like we said, we got to run into some time constraints when it comes down to it, for all those folks that are living over there in the UK and all of that too. That it is in the evening time for them. So again, too, it is though kind of cool though too, our time slot that we've got here on the weekends and everything too, because it does allow for us to be able to kind of catch folks over there and be able to have interviews and conversations with them if we can catch them just before they're heading to bed, But right on though, exactly. Thanks to Charles for being with us here today and talking with us today all about what he's got growing on there and helping us to understand a little bit more about no dig. I think it's just really a great subject. And again, too, I'd love to even just again dig even more into some of those factors of the no dig process, a lot of that sort of stuff that comes into it, but then also just kind of really also talk a little bit more about the ideas of there's a real hard line perspective sometimes when it comes to a lot of this sort of stuff. And I love that even he really emphasizes some of those points of flexibility when we need to be thinking about some of these sort of methods and things that we're using for the garden and all of that too. So really great to have Charles with us today. Brian says, you're a fave. Good luck on those snails. I was just saying, one of the cool things I love, and I was just watching something of his too yesterday and everything too, and it was making me think about that sort of stuff, but on snails and slugs, because they can be an issue. And even more so for me, I live in alleyways and they just find places to hide all over the place. But it really is in these sort of senses, and cool with folks who can do like market gardens and these sort of things and have these larger plots. But when you don't have all of these boards and rocks and things like that, and it's just kind of open, then that leaves less space for them to get into and hide and all of that sort of stuff too. So that is kind of a good thing about the type of gardening that Charles does as well too. But yeah, right on though. That was a really great conversation. I hope you all enjoyed it. I know that, and again, too, I saw a few people in here too. I think Rob was just mentioning it too. Is that they're ads, and I know YouTube does ads, and believe me, it can be kind of annoying. I get it. It annoys me too, and everything. But there's also another side to it all as well. Is that this whole channel, this show, it relies on ads. It relies on the little bit of money that I do get from ads. I wish ultimately, you know, I do listen to this podcast, and they're really fortunate that they've built a big, huge audience, and they've got things together to the point where they don't have to run ads for any of their podcasts or do any of that sort of stuff, because the listeners and all that, and I'm not saying, but it's kind of a listener funded, subscription based type thing, situation, so that they don't have to do ads and all that sort of stuff, because all of that, and maybe someday we'll get there and all that sort of stuff, and we can turn all that stuff off. But in the long run, we do need a few bucks around here when it comes down to the overall budget for what we do for the Let's Get Growing show. And so again, I'm sorry for all of you who have to put up with the ads, but well, it's just kind of the way it goes. For entertainment in a way, if that's what you would consider this, education, knowledge, talk, these sort of things, just like newspapers and anything of that sort of sense, communication in general. In order to really get communication out there, it really kind of requires funding, and that funding in general is just ads when it comes down to it. And I don't like it either, but you know what? That's just part of it, and I appreciate you guys watching those ads. And they really do got to figure something out a little bit better. I had this idea I thought that YouTube could do is more of like ad breaks, where they're built into live streams, where we live streamers choose them, so that it's not breaking into the middle of our conversation, because that's what's really the problem. Is that, they could utilize those moments where we already do our break, you know what I mean? And then kind of slot them in at that point, so that you're not breaking into any of the conversation or in any of the actual show itself, because that's what's really annoying about them. So they should do something like that and really fix that situation, so that we can both get the ad revenue and not be messing up with what we're trying to put out there for our audiences and everything. So again, too, just kind of those, awful necessary things in a sense when it comes down to it, at least at this point where we're at. That's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good. I mean, it just, and we could, at some sense, select, ad breaks or do some sort of thing. There's a way they could create a system that could be set up like that we could do, but when it comes down to it, there it is, when it comes down, all that sort of stuff. And I don't know, Rob, you seem to be getting more ads than, I don't know, anybody. Maybe that's something to do with your browser or something. I'm not sure if you're getting that many ads. I've seen you say another ad over and over again here. I know they put them in here and there, but that seems like quite a bit. But anyways, like I said, here we are. Thank you, everybody, so much for putting up with the ads and all of that sort of stuff to come hang out here with all of us on the Let's Get Growing show and have fun, enjoy these great conversations that we get to have here. We had such a really awesome day today talking with both Charles and Eli and Kate in their garden. Just a really great conversation today, and again too, a great conversation with all of you. I just been watching, and it's when we get to this level of conversation in the chat, it does become a little bit more. I have to start to try to really keep an eye out for certain stuff. So I know I missed some questions. I really apologize for that. I know that again too, sometimes trying to keep the conversation with our guest and try to follow along, and that sort of stuff. But as we're building up and the audience is getting bigger and we're doing certain things like that, I'll definitely hopefully get better at handling and taking care of all of that sort of stuff as well too. But I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me here. It's just really amazing to be able to do this here on the Let's Get Growing show, and to be able to talk with all of these amazing people that we get to talk with. We're so fortunate here. I mean, to be able to have a conversation with Charles Dowding today, in some of the really great guests that we've had here in the past. And if you are here visiting the show too, first, you're coming over, say, from Charles' channel or Eli's channel and all of that sort of stuff too, I really encourage you to go back and check out some of our other shows. Check out our live page here on the Urban Gardener channel page, and go check out. We've had some amazing guests on our shows here. You won't believe some of the guests that we actually get here. We're so fortunate. So I really hope that you all, you know the deal when it comes down to it, that you all subscribe. Click that subscribe button too. If you are here joining with us and you're new to the Let's Get Growing channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification to be notified of all of our upcoming videos and live streams. Click the like button. You know, we always like to see that thumbs up. So before you head out today, definitely be sure to hit the thumbs up button, and definitely share with all of your friends if you really enjoyed what you saw here today on the show. Definitely share. And like I said, follow all of those links down in the description below to all of our guests. And if, again, too, one of our guests is new to you as well, too, go over and give them a subscribe as well, too. Support our guests. That helps support our show as well, too. And again, too, like I say at the beginning of the show, I really, really appreciate all of you who go over to our guests' channels and hit one of their more recent videos, or maybe one of their social media, whether it's Instagram or any of those other places. Go get one of their more recent posts. Go leave them a comment. Let them know that you saw them here on the Let's Get Growing show. And yeah, really, really love that. And again, too, like I said, we are here every Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Let's Get Growing show. And we will be back here tomorrow for the Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show. And joining with us is our good friend, John Kohler from Growing Your Greens. John Kohler is going to be joining with us here live. Live on the show. It is so hard to get John Kohler on a live stream. I don't know if he's really ever done a live stream, to tell you the truth. I know he does his Q&As and that sort of stuff. I think he's dipped on live a couple of times on his channel. Maybe. I'm not too sure, but it's really hard. We've usually had to do like pre-recorded interviews with our good friend. But so you're going to want to be here. You're going to want to jump in. You're going to want to join the show tomorrow for sure, to get in on the conversation, a live conversation with our good friend John Kohler from Growing Your Greens. And John's going to talk all about his more recent issues, I guess, he's been having with YouTube. I know we're talking about ads and all that sort of stuff, and just some of these sort of things. John's dealing with some issues with YouTube lately, so I invited him on the show, our Sunday edition, to talk all about that and all about what he's got growing on in his upcoming growing and gardening season. And again, like I said, we're here each and every Saturday and Sunday. Next Saturday, I am not too sure yet. It's kind of up in the air what we're going to do. I do have a request out to a couple of people, maybe not too sure. Again, there's these certain days where I can get a guest that'll be like, yeah, that day, and then kind of later on it's like not too, and then I got someone who's like, it's all a part of having fun, getting the types of guests that we have here, the work that gets done in the background to get all of our great guests and everything. But next Saturday is probably one of those days where what we'll end up doing is just hanging out together. So it'll be featuring me, maybe, and we'll just kind of have a garden hangout day. We'll hang out with all of you here. Maybe if you do have any channels, I know that some of you are new here right now watching. If you do have any channels or anything like that, this would be a great opportunity for you to come join the show next week. What I like to do is I like to hand out our live link, and that will give any of you who might have a channel you might want to jump on and promote and maybe give a shout out to, and get on with me. It's sort of like a live call-in radio show, except for we do it video here. So you got to be prepared to do video and come on and show your face to everybody. But I'll give the live link during a fun garden live chat with the audience. We'll hang out together and talk all about gardening and all of that this next Saturday. And then next Saturday already, and it just seems like it was it just, or next Sunday already, actually, sorry, but it seems like it was just yesterday already that we had our good friend Gardner Scott from the Gardner Scott channel joining us for Q&A with Master Gardener Scott Wilson, where you can get all of your gardening questions answered. I know there were a few people who dropped in a couple of questions that I didn't quite get to that were more like garden related questions. This is a great opportunity next Sunday to get those sort of questions answered. So write down any questions that you might have throughout the week or something, and come join us next Sunday with Gardner Scott for all of your questions answered, our gardening Q&A with Master Gardener Scott Wilson next Sunday on the show. That's what we got coming up. We got a lot of things going on here on the Let's Get Growing show. And again, too, I hope all of you have had a great day here on the show, and we'll see all of you this next week. Again, to thank you. I can't say thank you enough. I know I get to be a broken record sometimes, and that's what I was just thinking about there. That's kind of what caught me up. We get towards the end of the show there. I'm trying to remember to not forget saying a few things, and then I fall back to making sure that I'm thanking you guys, which I really appreciate so much that you guys spend your time with me, and I can really overdo it sometimes. So again, sorry about that, but again, we do, like Jay says, we do appreciate you all, and I hope to see all of you coming up tomorrow at 11 a.m. for our Sunday edition with our good friend John Kohler right here on the Let's Get Growing show. I'll see all of you tomorrow.